Oh, g'day everyone. Today, well, we've got the two ordinary cops, or known as
Yeah,
very
very,
ordinary.
very ordinary, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad
Not,
yourself. Now, we're doing something a little bit different today, Damo. Before we get into, we're going to talk about investigations today. But before we get into it, we're trialing something.
yeah, we're having a go at this remote stuff, mate, which is technologically well advanced for us. So I'm pretty impressed that we were able to get it working at all. So
Yeah.
it's the first time we haven't been sitting in the same room just recording on a computer. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but it seems to be working pretty well so far. We did try one on Podbeam earlier, but it just didn't
No,
seem to work so well. But this one seems to be a lot quicker with the uptake on our voices and recording.
yeah, no, very good.
Well, mate, you want to start off and basically just introduce the people in what it's like to
Yeah,
investigate from the police point of view.
yeah. So what happened was, we've been telling stories about this and that, and a few people who aren't necessarily coppers got onto us and just said, "How do you do these investigations? Like, what do you actually do?" Everyone hears about it. Police have investigated this, blah blah blah. Name your job, and it got us thinking. We sort of do it naturally. It's just we understand what to do because it's trained to do it and then
Yeah,
experienced in doing it. So I think we can sort of kick off with how an investigation takes place. And an investigation is a search for the truth, basically. There is no outcome, so you don't come into it. The perfect way to come into it is a sense of what a very smart old detective taught us years ago was come in with a sense of disinterest. You have no interest in
yep,
the outcome. You are merely there to let the facts point the way. And there's techniques in extracting that from both witnesses, so people, victims, and well, just people in general. So victims and witnesses, and also
yep,
physical evidence that may be found at a scene. So I'll start off with the first point of any investigation is obviously a victim coming forward to the police to report that something's occurred. So that's always going to be the first port of call, as in what happened to this person. So that's what we call a statement. So you come into the police station or you're on scene somewhere and you'll make a statement. Now, what we do in a statement is people might think, yeah, well, they find out or you get information off them. It's like, yes, that's true. To make it formal as evidence, we do what's called a statutory declaration. So that means that the people when they're giving us the information, it has to be truthful. That's legislated that it's an offence to say anything that's not true in a stat dec or a statement. So we cover off on that and we explain the legalities. But then we go through a very objective way of extracting information from a person. And it goes a little bit against the natural way that you might speak to somebody. So we never give a witness or a victim or anybody we're interviewing any information from us. We're investigating what happened to them. There's nothing that I can possibly provide to that story that's going to improve any information. What I can do is apply techniques to extract the best information from that person. And the way we do that is we use a method called a first recall. So that will be an open-ended question. And generally, there's a couple of acronyms used there. One is TEDS, so TEDS. So the words there, or the key words are tell me, explain, describe, and show me. And then once you get a little bit from that, you can move down into the who, what, when, where, how, those open-ended questions that more people would be familiar with. So the way I used to start it I'd say, so tell me why you're here today. And I'd let them start telling their story. Now, an example, and I'll keep it really simple, but I'll just include a number of what we call topic boxes. It might be a person has witnessed or a person has been victim of an assault. So it might be that
yep,
me and my mates were at the pub. Well, straight away, I've got me and my mates. There's a topic box. So there's a group of other witnesses now potentially who I need to talk to. So I'm not going to interrupt them, but I'm going to mark my mates. We were at the pub. The pub. There's a topic box. Where were you? What were you doing? So while they're giving their free recall and I'm not interrupting them in any way, I'm marking down these points that I'm going to revisit to extract further information from. So it might be that the person says, well, me and my mates were down at the pub and this bloke I've never met before came up to me and he started saying some things to me. I turned around and said, mate, can you go away? And as I said that, he punched me in the face. I fell over. He walked outside. My mates sort of had a go at him and they left. And that's the end of that. That's a very simple assault in a pub. So from that little free recall that I've just given in 10 seconds, the topic boxes, as I've covered, would be me and my mates, the pub, a stranger I've never met before, punched me, my mates had a go, then left. So what I do then is the free recall. You can assist a person to actually speak, and there's methods we do to make a person just naturally speak. And a great tool we use is silence. So I used to do the lean forward, look them in the eye, and nod, and just provide them with a whole heap of silence to fill with words. And it's a natural reaction for a person to want to fill that gap. So as they that's the best way to extract a recall. Once you've extracted as best a recall as you possibly can from that person, that's when you'll go back through those topic boxes and expand on them. So it might be, okay, so what you've told me, and I used to go back right through the recall just to clarify it with them and make sure they're happy. And that might be that you said that you and your mates went to the pub, a fella you've never seen before came up, he punched you, and then your mates had to go at him and he left. Is that right? Yep, that's correct. Okay, I just want to go through that. I want to get a bit more detail if you don't mind. So you said your mates. Can you tell me who was with you? Yeah, well, it was Jono. Just said, okay, so who's Jono? What's his full name? Where's he? How do I contact him? So what I've done then is I've found out who the mates are, and I've now got a witness list of at least the mates who I can talk to. All right, and then you move on. Okay, you said the pub. Which pub? Oh, we were down at the Two Ordinary Cops Hotel. Oh, congratulations. Where in the pub were you sitting? I was sitting at the front bar. Okay, who else was in the bar? Oh, these other blokes were there and this and that. Which table were you at? And the reason I do that is because licensed premises these days are covered in CCTV. So what I'm doing, while I'm expanding the information from that person and their recall to get the best information and really lock them into that story, I'm also providing myself with what we call lines of inquiry. So that is that I now know that I can get CCTV footage. I now know that I can go to that pub and find out who other witnesses may be. And I can get further statements from people who weren't necessarily bipartisan, basically. They're not involved in the party who's under investigation or the person coming forward to make the complaint. So that corroborates the information that I've extracted already from that witness. So already people playing along at home can see that I've created, from a person coming up saying, oh, some bloke just punched me in the face, I've now got avenues of inquiry to conduct an investigation into that matter. Now, sure, I'm investigating which on the face of it looks like an assault, but I'm going to flesh it out without fear or favour and see exactly what has happened there, because quite often people will only tell you what's in their best interests, and it may be that he's lost a fight. Who knows? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to find out exactly what happened, and from that, I'm going to take what perfect information I have, or the best information I could get, and I'm going to apply that to points of proof for a possible offence. So basically I used to love it. There's a real game in extracting information from people, and what we build is what I like to call a diamond. So an investigation diamond is you start at the top of a diamond, which is a point, and that point is your victim who's come forward to make that statement. From their information, your further lines of inquiry expand the diamond down. So you can picture in your head moving down the diamond, and your lines of inquiry have increased. So now you're gathering more information. From each person you speak to, you will gain further lines of inquiry, which will widen your investigation. Now, that investigation will widen. You'll interview more witnesses. You'll review CCTV footage. You might even look at what happened before and after, any other interactions with the people. You'll get to a point where you're not discovering any more information, but you still might be tying up loose ends. So then what happens is the diamond will start to close in on itself. And at the completion of the investigation, you're at the point at the bottom of the diamond, and you've completed the investigation. You've gathered all of the available information from that you've been able to extract throughout that investigation. So I think that gives a little bit of a rundown into what you extract from that. That's a very simple outlay of it. But I wouldn't mind going into if you don't mind, do you want to clarify or talk about crime scenes? So the fact is that we've identified the pub. Now that place is a crime scene or a potential crime scene. So do you want to talk about crime scenes, Schultzy, and what we do there?
Well, mate, before I actually go into that, I was doing what you normally do in an interview, and I was taking down notes, as you probably saw in the video. And a couple of things. So you mentioned a really good point there, where you said, maybe the guy lost the fight, and that's why he's reporting it. He's actually not a victim. And that's why I've always, whenever I train my young troops, I always train them to question the victim more than you do the offender, because we need to know the facts before we start actually moving on in the investigation. So that was just a good point, I think, to cover off on. And also, mate, just like on the recall, we do a few different strategies where we can get people to recall more than, like you. I think you said it when we tried to record this before, how you get them to look from the top down and all that sort of thing. You actually go through their hair color, their eyes and all that, especially if you can't identify the potential offender. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, definitely. So yeah, what you got there, and that's where they are where your lines of inquiries kick off. So I think as we were going through that, I probably skipped over that a little bit. Your offender is one of those topic boxes. So you've gone through my mates, the pub. Well, the pub is now what I call a crime scene, potentially a crime scene. So a crime scene is a place where you believe or suspect that a relevant offence has been committed, and that's under the legislation of the NT. But they're basically the same Australia-wide. All jurisdictions have some kind of crime scene powers. And by declaring a place a crime scene, it gives police ownership of that place, the ability to exclude people from it, to make sure that powers kept on. It gives you powers that you normally wouldn't have in order to carry out the investigation into that relevant offence. So that's the first place that we've identified a crime scene. But then, as I said, as you said, sorry, you've got a person I've never seen before. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to just isolate that person for me, and I want you to think hard about nothing else but that person, and just describe them in as much detail as you can, from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet. And then what you do is you extract another mini recall where they just go through and you let them just talk, don't interrupt them, let them talk from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. Now, a strange thing that we were taught to do, and I've done, especially in more serious jobs where we're really into who we're dealing with, we've had where we will then go, right, can you now describe the person as best you can from the bottom of their feet to the top of their head. So what it does is it makes their brain skip, and then they have to really think. It goes against the natural flow of the brain and allows a more detailed description of that person.
Yeah, mate. It's like what you were saying there, that because normally you read what left to right,
Yeah.
and if you actually make them read right to left, it makes them, they have to concentrate then and go harder. So that's a good way for people to actually associate what we're talking about there.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. But crime scenes are a big. I know that we did, you did the courses as well, detective training. But the first point for that was in recruit training, you get a basic understanding of crime scenes, but you basically get taught that you can have crime scenes. These are the crime scene powers. But you don't go into a lot of detail at that level, because generally as a junior copper, you're not going to be setting up a crime scene. The most you're really going to have to do with it, unless you're in a bush area or something like that, is you're going to be a crime scene guard, and that's about it. But as a detective and further down, even as a general duty sort of senior investigator or a shift supervisor, you will have a bit to do with crime scene powers. And that's where we had extra training on what happens in a crime scene. But for me, the best training we had, and an excellent quote from an old detective superintendent in the NT, was a crime scene should be a place of extreme inactivity. And I really like that, because the whole idea is that you try and snapshot that place in time, and then you have someone trained, a crime scene examiner or a scene of crime officer at the lower end, or a crime scene examiner at the higher end. That's just difference in training is all that is. And you have that person conduct a very forensic examination of that scene, obviously depending on how serious the matter is, for just resource allocation more than anything. But
but I mean, you've even got the crime scene log, so you've got somebody there that checks everybody in and out and times, what they did. I mean, it's all very detailed, because the problem is, and look, anybody that's watched CSI and all that sort of thing, they've got people walking all around the place. That's not really what happens.
No, not at all.
I mean, somebody tries to get in the crime scene, you're not going to let them. You arrest them. That's it. It's very it's not like what you see in the movies, that's for sure.
No, and mate, you made a really good point there. The reason police, generally speaking, don't like these crime scene examinations, blah blah blah, all these CSI murder investigation shows, sometimes they're a little bit entertaining, but they're just fiction. They are just not anything like reality. I put a post on Facebook years ago and said CSI is about as accurate as Star Wars, people. And I stand by it. So having people just walking all through a crime scene while you've got forensics officers conducting, fingerprint examination or blood splatter swabbing, that simply would never happen. You'd lock that crime
No,
scene down. You'd hand the actual scene to the scene of crime forensic officers, and they would be the only ones to go in there unless they had to show you something very specific that may lead to further lines of inquiry. And even that's rare.
that's right.
It would be that there'd have to be an element of urgency for you to enter that scene and actually have a look at that once you're at that level.
Yep.
And yeah, that I think I've done that a number of times where I was more assisting the forensics at things like murders where we've got a dead body there and there's blood everywhere, and they might show something like, oh, look at this. This might be an immediate scene, line of inquiry because we're going to have this scene locked for days, So,
Yep.
but yeah, you just don't go into a crime scene. It's locked out and that's it. You shut it down,
No.
you hold it and you kick everyone else out of it, and yeah, you go from there.
And that's right. And your powers to dig and all that sort of thing it's like, I mean, you've got to justify everything you do, of course, but the powers are just phenomenal when it comes to setting up a crime scene. It's you're in control of it.
Yeah, well, you just take ownership and you're allowed to do anything. You can break down doors, break down walls. You've got, obviously, like you just said, you've got to justify your actions. But
Yep.
certainly at the higher end, if you're dealing with a homicide or something like that, it may be that you're extracting who knows what you're doing. If you've got a line of inquiry within that crime scene, you're allowed to do anything to find that information. So yeah, there's a reason why it has to be approved by a superintendent for a crime scene to be declared, and that's because it is just such a high level power that allows police and forensics to do a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And mate, I think what we might do is we might just segue a little bit and maybe relate some of the stuff that I suppose it's not really a good scenario, but we'll run through that one where we were junior cops. And do you want to run through that?
Yeah,
I reckon did that unlawful entry?
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, get into it because I can't remember it as well as you can. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it must have been early on in our career. It must have been 2008 or something. I'm not really entirely sure, but you and I were working together, and we were still on probation as far as I remember. So we were only really junior cops, and basically, it's a blind leading the blind to a certain extent.
Blind, deaf, and dumb leading blind, deaf, and dumb.
And anyway, we got called out. It was early in the morning. It might have been before or just as we started shift. There was a break-in down at Hart's Transport. Just downtown, or it's slightly out of town. Anyway, so we shot down there, and Keith Curry quickly joined us not long after. And anyway, he was doing the forensics. But what had happened is somebody had basically got to Hart's Transport the night before. They'd pushed in the air conditioner, so it actually fell inside the building, and then they climbed in through where the air conditioner was, and they went in and stole some rum and coke cans out of the bar fridge in the office there. But then the problem is, well, the funny thing we saw was the fact is they were also transporting alcohol around the territory. So if you actually walk through the next door and open up the warehouse, there was from floor to ceiling pallets of alcohol. Yep. And I mean, if they'd found that, we would have actually found them on scene. How many times have we actually gone into a scene and found people passed out because they just sat there drinking the alcohol?
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
And so what we did anyway, like Keith was obviously taking care of the forensic side of stuff. There wasn't much more for us to do. We got the victim statement and all that sort of thing. So then we can, proceed in the investigation. And we knew there was a bush camp just down the road. So what we did is, we'll just go down and ask questions there. So this is what you do. You go and talk to witnesses. And is there anybody that could be a possible witness in relation to this? The joy, especially working around Catherine, is a lot of people know a lot of people. So it's a small town, and so you can identify people reasonably easy. It's not, perfect, but you can do it easily. So then we went down the road. We spoke to the bush camp, and somebody said, "Oh, we saw such and such walk past at about 2 o'clock in the morning. He was carrying a bag. He was walking with somebody else." Oh, right, okay. So anyway, we look up that name on the system. I think it was Gary Houseman at the time. He was working Intel, and he called us up on the radio and said, "Oh, such and such. He lives at this house in Kalana community." So then we go, "Okay, we'll go and have a look there." So we rock up there, and anyway, we sit there and talk. The elderly couple look after the place, and we had a chat to them. We said, "Oh, is anybody drinking here like last night or early this morning?" Said, "Yeah, yeah, no, they all got drunk and right. There's the cans there. There's some in the bin and all that sort of thing, and they're rum and coke cans." Now, anybody, I mean, we were pretty savvy then to the fact that when you're looking at those sort of communities, one, you can't actually drink in Kalano, so there's an offence right on itself because it's a prescribed area.
Mm.
And secondly, they normally don't drink rum and coke cans. They usually drink VB or some other beer or maybe
Yeah,
rum by
bottled
itself.
spirits, but not pre-mixed cans. That was
Yeah,
quite rare.
not
Yeah.
pre-mixed. Yeah. So anyway, we said, all right, well, we're on a go here. We knew rum and coke cans were actually stolen from this place, so this is we're on the right track. And anyway, I said, oh, is anybody still here? And they said, oh yeah, there's a guy passed out. We just put him up in the bedroom there, upstairs. And we said, oh, can we go in and have a chat to him? They said, yeah, not a problem. So anyway, we went up. And this guy was totally out of it. He was basically passed out, and we roused him enough, basically sitting there, mate. You come with us, but we had to almost pick him up and carry him downstairs. He was completely out of it, and we informed him as he's under arrest, and we put him in the cage, and then we went round. But he wasn't the name of that guy was not the guy we were looking for. So anyway, we went round. We ran to a few other houses. We couldn't find that guy we were looking for. So obviously he either hadn't drunk that much, or maybe it could have been a mistaken identity. Who knows? Um, but but anyway, we took him back up and we put him in the cells, and Keith finished off his forensics. And I mean, see, well, I think we had to wait about 6 months for that to come back. But when the guy sobered up, we had a chat to him on an interview, and he coughed up. He told exactly how it happened, how he pushed the air conditioner in, how he went in, stole the stuff, and then he went back yeah, and then he found somebody else on the way. He said, and that was that guy that we were chasing, and we drank in Kalana community.
Yeah.
So in the end, he got charged for the unlawful entry. The other bloke, we actually went and gave a ticket to for drinking in a prescribed
Yeah.
area.
So it's
But
where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, Catherine version?
yeah,
So it was so mate, and look, the thing that made that memorable for me as well, that was the first time, and I know this may sound silly, but we were very junior police. We hadn't conducted a big investigation, like a whodunit, and this is not a big investigation, but we hadn't
no,
conducted any level of investigation by ourselves ever.
no,
We'd worked with somebody else, and we conducted a minor investigation. And it might have been we've taken a statement in an assault or a domestic, or maybe been the first member on scene at an unlawful entry and carried out a few lines of inquiry. But this was me and you working together, which was a bit exciting in itself because we were so young. We
yep.
were junior, really junior on the road. I
Yeah,
can't
we
remember
made
how.
piglets.
Oh,
Piglets, we
piglets,
called
mate. We were. I
ourselves.
think we were two. I reckon we were 2 months in. It was that junior.
Yep,
And
yep,
for us to sort of, we were excited and new, and this is picture grade one, not university level stuff. And for us to
yep,
be able to go down the rabbit holes and follow up on, we did very minor notebook entry interviews of witnesses in the field, and then went in and
yep,
made entry into a house using the person's permission to enter.
yep.
All of these things that we did. Looking back, yeah, sure, it's a minor job, but we had a real sense of achievement out of that. That was no input
We did,
whatsoever.
definitely.
It's like when a pilot's learning how to fly, their first little solo, even just taking
Yep.
off and landing by themselves, which may seem routine to a pilot, is a huge deal when it's the first time you've done it. So we were stoked with ourselves, Schultzy. We'd arrested
Yeah.
within an hour of, or not even within half an hour of attending a scene for an unlawful entry. We not only had we solved who'd done it and recovered some alcohol and found other alcohol that had been stolen, but we'd arrested the offender, placed him in custody, and later on that afternoon we interviewed him, put a file together.
Yeah.
Matter was before the court before we left for the day. So that was
Yep.
mate, that was an excellent little job for us
And
really early on.
and he was convicted straight up.
Yeah, straight to court, pled guilty. That was the end of that. So
Yep.
it was,
Yeah.
but to contrast that with towards the end, in 29, I mean, property crime is one thing. I've been involved in thousands of property crime series, complex property crime series, where you've got vehicles, multiple, stolen from house break-ins in suburban Darwin that are then used in ram raids, that the same offenders then go and do armed robberies of service stations, then go and steal further cars, then involved in pursuits. So think of the complexity of all those offences, all those victims, all those witnesses. I've coordinated well, plenty of them, like plenty of that level too.
Yeah.
But that's as a detective sergeant way down the track, literally 12 years later. For that early job, I'm still as proud of that early job as I am of those later jobs. But I mean, that's property crime. As a junior member, and I can go on to, we can talk about homicides in a different podcast, but in a couple of times I've led the initial response to a murder investigation and gone to that level of detail. And that changes scope as well, because now not only are you coordinating and trying in your own brain to establish what's occurred, you've got multiple moving parts by way of police investigators, forensics attending from Alice Springs. You've got a scene in the middle of nowhere surrounded by lots of intoxicated people who don't want much to do with police. And they're your witnesses, so that you have to build that extra level of rapport with them and then extract that information from them once they're sober. And it might be that you need to lock them down because they're gonna split. And then on top of that, you're in the middle of nowhere. You don't have phone reception. You're quite junior, and you've got bosses wanting updates. So you've got to up-manage expectations and go, listen, as per the investigation management guidelines, I will have an update. I'll have a sit rep to you in the next 2 hours, but I need to take statements. There's only 3 of us here or 4 of us here. And I've got junior guys, so I need to be checking their statements as well. And anyway, so coordinating all of that was a hell of a lot further on from a couple of rum and coke cans from Hart Transport, but it's all the same stuff.
Well, it is, yeah. It just gets more detailed, and it's funny you said something there that I remember. And it kind of relates to something that I wanted to bring up as well. I mean, the fact is, you do have bosses, like you close down a highway, say, that's a crime scene, you've got a crash, a motor vehicle crash and all that sort of stuff, and you close it down, you're getting all this stuff from the bosses sitting there going, we need to open this up, and you're going, well, no, we don't, because this is the situation. We've got to make sure we contain this, so we make sure we get all the evidence before we do open it up, and of course they've got the political pressure because they want a major highway open, and all that sort of thing, and so you're constantly, it's not only investigating the scene, but you're constantly trying to allow the public to either get around it, or chat to them, or make some other diversion. So you're not interrupting them, and it just brought me a memory. I was in Brisbane City just a couple of months ago, and there was just simple, basically a bike and like a moped had pulled up at the said traffic lights, and a car came up, bumped it, knocked the guy completely off the bike, and fell onto the bonnet, and well, it wasn't overly hard, and anyway, we're sitting there in the in town square, and they pick him up. I sit there and look over, and he goes, like, I'm a fair way away, and I'm dealing with something else. I'm chatting to some people about some work. And anyway, you see him, like, they get him up and they push his bike on. He seems all right. He's walking away and all that. And one woman's sitting there going, oh, we should close down the crime scene. No, it's a major Brisbane City street. You've got CCTV footage everywhere. There's basically, you're not going to get any forensics. There's nothing there. No. You've got 1,000 people that saw it. Me as one. I said, that's like, you can open that back up, but it's also us understanding what forensics and what investigation and what crime scenes involve to be able to actually access this. But the problem is, somebody's probably seen it on CSI and they've locked down the whole intersection.
Exactly right. So, and that tempering police response to the fact that life must go on, that's a constant. Like, it's funny that you said a highway, because I got a complaint against police. I can't remember the year, but I was a senior junior member, if you know what I mean. So I was I think I was a senior constable at, I don't know, I think I was at Tennant Creek or Catherine or somewhere like that. And we'd had a fatal motor vehicle crash. I must have been at Tennant Creek. Anyway, we were down and we'd closed the Stewart Highway both ways, and it had been shut for a number of hours, and we were aware of that. But we had a dead body on the road that we couldn't move. Like, we had a body there that we had no way of recovering, and we didn't really have a way to let people around. We couldn't go, look, there's a fence line over there with a bloody fire break that you can go, let's put the traffic down there. We couldn't do that. So all of a sudden, must have been in phone range, because I remember getting a phone call from a commander, and this particular commander, who is not my friend, he was very adamant that we reopen the highway. And I was like, sir, we cannot reopen this bloody highway. We've got a dead body on the road. He's like, find a way, fix it, find a way. So I think in the end we found a way, because he's obviously under a lot of someone with a lot of political power up there was right on top of him. Anyway, without going into a heap of detail, because I'm not engaging in political fights, there was we reopened the highway, and I ended up with a complaint against police because someone was traumatised that they'd seen what they thought was a dead body, and we went, well, they did see a bloody dead body.
That's right. Yeah,
What do you want me to do? I mean, we covered them up as best they could, but it was still a dead body, and
Well,
we were literally waiting to have that body recovered, so it wasn't. We did need to do a few things forensically with the body, but it wasn't so much that. It was more that we just needed to recover the scene, and we didn't have the resources to do it yet.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I mean, when you actually look at things like that, they take a lot of time. Like I remember, I was actually traveling down in the domestic family and violence unit car. Like I'd picked it up; it was brand new from Darwin. I was driving it back down. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this car was trying to overtake a road train. Anyway, the front tire blew out. It actually swerved into the side of the semi trailer. I was behind the semi trailer, but I was just coming up over the hill. And it flipped about 6 times and then came to rest, and I pulled up there. So I'm working, as a plainclothes Connie in the detective violence role. And anyway, I pulled up, and those undercover cars, they've got flashing lights, but they're not overly bright like the.
I'm just going to correct you there. Unmarked car. There's nothing undercover about them. They stand out like dog's testicles.
Very true.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I didn't even have a high vis vest and all that sort of thing. And I'm still a bit sore about the Catherine Police Station about this, because I rang the duty super. I rang Catherine Police Station, said this is the incident, blah blah blah. But the woman, she actually got out of it fine. She walked out of the car crash. I couldn't believe it.
Mm.
And anyway, so I had my ex-wife at the time. I was getting them to help out, and basically I said, take her away. I said, we need to get a statement from her, make sure she's all right. I'll control the traffic. Luckily, the truck driver pulled up and he had his cones and all that sort of thing, so we could divert it down to one lane of traffic.
Yeah.
But I think that was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The car got picked up in the end. Nobody came to help me, so it was only me and the truck driver directing traffic.
Oh, you had it all in
even
order.
Though well, apparently, because I think they said, oh, well, Schultzy's got this. He's done this once or twice before. I said, yeah, but I'll tell you what, for the potential of something to happen, it was definitely high, especially coming onto dark. And anyway, so we were directing traffic through, and I think I basically did the scene. Whilst directing traffic, basically we got a statement from her. So the Fireys, I think, rocked up in. So this is 70 k's north of Catherine.
Yeah.
The Fireys rocked up in about probably 25 minutes. The Ambos rocked up in about probably 27 minutes.
Yep.
When did the police show up?
Next day.
4 hours later.
Yeah.
When the car was getting put onto the tow truck.
Yeah.
And I said, well, thanks for that. Now I'm going to go. So then I went back into the office and wrote up the job.
Yep.
And I think I was in the office till about, because you know what the crash investigation jobs are like.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to write up that crash investigation report or whatever it was. Yeah. And I reckon I finished close to midnight.
I reckon you are still dirty about that, Schultzy.
Well, it's funny. The duty super said at the time, "Make sure you claim an overtime." I said, "Don't you worry, I am."
Yeah, pot kettle, bloody oath. So you've raised another point that's interesting. I'm just aware of our time, but all the stuff I was saying earlier about crime scene examiners and all the rest of it, that's perfect world stuff. Out in the bush, quite often it's you and maybe some detectives, depending on how big the job gets. Like for a big job, they might send a crime scene examiner and 2 detectives, maybe. For a major homicide, that's a different story. They'll send a decent team generally, if they're available.
Yeah.
And especially if there's a bit to do, they'll send a decent team out there. But out in the bush, you'll investigate things as a small team, way higher, at a way higher level than you would if you're in the middle of Darwin City, for example, or lo and behold, Sydney or Brisbane, or where you've got every specialist under the sun. But yeah, certainly if you're in a place like Borroloola, which is we've both worked at, there's you and your offsider, and if you really, really need someone, you call in the guys who are off duty, and there's only about 2 of them.
Exactly.
So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And sometimes at Borroloola we're down to just 2 of us.
Yeah, it's just
for a 6-person station. So
welcome to a brand new day.
Exactly. Mate, but before we finish off, mate, and we will go more into investigations because there's so much more to what you've given is a good foundation of what.
Oh, mate, we have touched the surface. Sort of We've barely scratched the surface, but it's good to get an introduction, like you say.
Yep. And but mate, we've decided we're going to start doing the shout outs towards the end because mate, we've had a few people contact us. Well, contact me. I don't know if you've had anybody
Yeah,
contact you. You've
quite a
been
few.
pretty busy
Yep.
during the week. And the first one was actually Brad Browning. So a shout out to him. He's a Queensland or ex Cupol copper. We met him through a funny sort of meeting, I suppose, or introduction, which we'll talk to when we're going to get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's happy to come on, so we'll arrange that. He only lives up in Toowoomba, so that's not too bad. But he's a funny guy, and we can go through how we met. But shout out to him. He said he's really happy with the podcast. The other one was, mate, well, our sergeant from college, Di Brown.
Yeah, unbelievable. Di Brown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She
Tore,
messaged me
tore
and
me a new one for wearing my PT shorts out on the grog when I was at the college.
oh yeah, and I think I may or may not have. I cannot recall whether I slapped her ass that night,
I can
but
recall it 100% occurred. Yeah.
And but no, she was a great sergeant in the police, and she actually came down to join us down in Catherine as well. So fantastic. She was really good in especially guiding us, as we went through the college and then as probationary officers. So a big shout out to her.
Mate, she was excellent. She was as tough as old boots, but you could tell
Yep.
it came from a place of care. So
Yep.
she was not nasty for the sake of being nasty. She was tough when she had to be, but she was also tough on anyone who messed with her troops. So she was excellent, mate. I really enjoyed her company.
Yeah, definitely, and one of the best sergeants I ever had, that's for sure. And the third one is a bloke I work with, Daniel Wilson. He
Oh,
he
Dan, yeah.
contacted me this afternoon. Yeah, he listened to all of them. He loves them. He reckons this is great. Yeah, he loves them. He sits there and mows his lawns and listens to us. So yeah, big shout out to him
Very
and
good.
thanks for the support.
Yeah, get in touch if you
So
want to shout out. Get in touch if you hate us. Get in touch. We'd love to hear it.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you'll definitely get a shout out if you do that.
That's for sure. Anyway, mate, I suppose we'll finish this one up here, eh?
Absolutely, mate. Two ordinary cops signing off. See you next time.
All right. See ya.